In recent years, the advent of information technology has disrupted the political scene in the free world. Blinded by dystopian headlines such as Brexit and Trumpism, many are led to believe that democracy cannot survive the age of disinformation and social media. However, we here at Group 1 argue that information technology can and has been strengthening our democracies. Information technologies ultimately improve electoral democracy. Electoral democracy is defined as a government in which the supreme power is vested in the people and exercised by them directly or indirectly through a system of representation, usually involving periodically held free elections. By this definition, generally methods to strengthen this system can be summarized in the following 4 points. First, a democracy is improved by increasing outlets for practicing freedom of speech and assembly. This ensures that civil discussion and social liberties are guaranteed. Increasing citizen involvement in the democratic process by increasing outreach to more voters to allow for the voices of all citizens to be heard. Distributing power among multiple interest groups and political entities by ensuring government processes are transparent and that elected officials are accountable. Lastly, ensuring more citizens are confident in the results is critical. This demands improved security and more reliable methods being employed. We believe that information technology has, in the past, greatly improved the above 4 points through the following channels. I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. The success of democracy hinges on citizens, minority groups, and even those that we disagree with, who can have an opportunity to speak up and be involved with the democratic process. This is critical, as in an electoral democracy, these voices help shape the way governments solve collective problems or make judgments. When lacking diversity in opinion, democracies degrade into authoritarian regimes ruled by a single entity. Hearing the voices of different minority groups, age groups, and social classes could lead to greater inclusivity and strike a balance for all groups of people. Information technology opens up additional channels of communication for individuals, regardless of background, to have a voice on issues that concern them the most, in the form of social media, websites, blogs, and videos. Since the beginning of the century, information technology has been expanding and empowering more people to be heard. For example, Twitter has over 353 million active monthly users and has increased over 7-fold over the last decade. Amongst them, 500 million posts are created every day. This level of engagement and voice is unheard of in pre-information technology times. With this power, people are eager to express their opinion and engage in conversations to call for justice when minority groups are abused. For example, during the George Floyd incident, there were over 8.8 million tweets regarding Black Lives Matter. This conversation further pushed for social and justice reform. This mechanism allows democracies to self-examine and self-improve, building a more unified and pluralistic environment. Another perspective is from the politicians who need to engage with their constituents. With platforms such as Twitter, politicians can speak directly to voters like never before, which is shown through the large following of recent US presidents such as Barack Obama and Donald Trump, who are amongst the top Twitter profiles with 128 million and 88 million followers respectively. Therefore, information technology is strengthening democracy by giving the silenced people a voice and giving countries the chance to build a more inclusive government and a stronger democracy for all the people. Information technology allows for a wider outreach so that more people can participate in the democratic process. One of the fundamental driving forces of a functional democracy is freedom of speech and assembly. Information technology such as social media, online forums, and online journalism give access and power to anyone with an internet connection to exercise their democratic right to freedom of speech and assembly. Pre-information technology methods such as TV news broadcasts, newspapers, or other forms of traditional journalism put the power of voice in the hands of a selective few. Using information technology, the general public can also have their own voice without significant barrier to entry. For instance, anyone can create, join, or post on a Facebook page, and in doing such, spark conversation on varying opinions and views, which is an essential component of democracy. Twitter hashtags can also be used to empower normal citizens and have their collective voices be heard by politicians and people in power, another cornerstone to democracy. Social media can also be used to organize protests while eliminating geographic and physical barriers. Take, for example, the Egyptian Revolution of 2011, where activists across Egypt protested against the corrupt rule of the former president Hosni Mubarak. Protesters used Facebook and Twitter to organize their in-person protests and coordinate a plan of action to have their voices heard. It is often for this reason that authoritarian leaders such as Mubarak try to lock down internet access during times of civil unrest to prevent the use of social media by the public for having their opinions and views conveyed. Another such example is the Occupy movement. The Occupy movement is a leaderless movement that operates virtually using information technology to organize people under one common belief, that the one thing we all have in common is that we are the 99% that will no longer tolerate the greed and corruption of the 1%. Information technology enables leaderless movements such as Occupy, which allows everyone to be a part of the democratic process. While all members and participants may not share a common view, the goal is not to push any particular agenda or idea, but rather to allow for the ideas of the 99% to be heard, as is crucial to an effective democracy. Technology exposes negative press about governments and makes it easier for individuals to assemble against corruption. A famous example of this is the Arab Spring, which is a series of protests that started in the early 2010s. The protests spawned in response to the authoritarian government and human rights violations in Tunisia, then later spread to other Arab countries. The increase in smartphone owners in these countries gave more people access to social media. Sites like Facebook and Twitter were used to help spread both local and global awareness of the corruption that was happening in countries like Tunisia. Social media became a public place for people to share their thoughts freely, connect, and organize demonstrations. Furthermore, many women activists in these countries were able to use social media to participate during this time, which is important because in many parts of the Arab world, women face culturally sanctioned constraints which prevent them from being involved in politics. Therefore, social media became a place where Arab women were able to debate on equal footing with their counterparts. Ultimately, social media played a key role in the Arab Spring by revealing the oppression people faced and gathering individuals to fight against it. A more recent example would be the death of George Floyd, which helped to reveal the corruption of the United States police force after a video of his abuse by officers went viral on social media. In similar cases before, not all information like body cam footage is released to the public and in a timely manner, so that the people affected by the incident are left in the dark. However, through increased access to social media and smartphones, citizens were able to capture visual evidence of the mistreatment the officers did to George Floyd and share it with the public easily. This allowed more Americans to see raw footage of the corruption that was happening within their country instead of depending on mainstream media or missing out on the information altogether. Social media also was responsible for organizing rallies and allowed anyone to show support to communities like Black Lives Matter. In the end, the use of technology was able to assemble a broad, multi-ethnic, and multi-generational group of people to protest together against police brutality and systematic racism. Usage of information technology can greatly help in improving the management and conduction of existing electoral systems. In terms of streamlining the election process, the usage of information technology can greatly help in improving the management and conduction of existing electoral systems. As time goes on, more and more electoral management bodies globally employ the use of technological aids such as e-poll books, electronic tabulation, online voter registration, biometrics, and online publication of results. According to the international IDEA, the Institute for Democratic and Electoral Assistance, In 2017, only a minority of countries at around 11% conducted elections largely without using some sort of technology. 71% of countries employed the use of information technology in voter registration, leading to significant impacts in election administration. This plays a huge part in reducing resources in terms of staff, infrastructure, and material burdens often faced by traditional elections, and increases the overall efficiency of conducting one. And any improvements in efficiency can directly impact the integrity of the results. One key example is Brazil back in 2014 with the introduction of fingerprint technology to their election system. In prior elections, voter registration was a tedious process involving poll workers having to receive documents, cross-check registered information, and granting access for voters to actually use an electronic voting machine to cast their vote. With biometrics, human intervention was completely removed, leading to an extremely swift and reliable voting process, preventing any voter impersonation attempts. All relevant data to the voter and their biometrics were stored and accessed with the use of online databases by the electoral court system. Online results and databases also allow greater access to electoral data and inherently increase the transparency of elections. Publishing election data provides numerous benefits in providing the citizen journalists, observers, and NGOs the same information that large media corporations do, allowing them to be invested in the electoral process, leading to a more inclusive and trusted election. Especially in a landscape of a global pandemic, the viability of voting completely online becomes something extremely valuable if implemented correctly. It allows for secluded, indigenous, displaced communities or individuals to have a voice, be valued, and cast a ballot when they are usually unable. While electoral democracy was not created with the use of information technology in mind, by analyzing various recent events and global trends, our group firmly believes that information technology has had a profoundly positive impact on the development of modern democracies. The proliferation of information technology use will serve to make our democratic institutions more liberal, inclusive, transparent, and secure.